Welcome to Darker Days Radio, and I'm one of your regular hosts, Chris. I am joined by Mike. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Chris, excited to be here. What are we going to be
Yeah,
talking about today?
we're going to be talking about Gundams
Ooh.
because of the algorithm. Nah, seriously. No, we're going to be talking about Gundams because obviously there's a lot of hype right now. Things on the horizon. People are getting into it. If you're into war games, it's hobby adjacent. If you're into anime and stuff like that, then and certain role play games, then it's adjacent to that. And there's some good stuff in there. And like I said, there's games coming out for it, and there's also interesting themes and ideas that we're going to pull out. So we're going to talk about a lot of different Gundam series because I feel also that a lot of people have been talking about the Gundam models, but maybe talking less about the Gundam series themselves, and so gloss over the things of they're kind of hitting the thing of like, wow, big robot, cool, and I think we're going to be like big robot, not so cool as we get into it. Before we get into that, things to update. Obviously, any interesting news? I just saw pretty much all of Iron Kingdom's RPG currently, including the books from second edition, are on a humble bundle. So
Oh,
when this
excellent.
episode goes out, it's on there. There's also a humble bundle out right now for Wrath and Glory. Also out in the last couple of weeks, where for Wrath and Glory was Dark Tide Extraction, which I worked on, which was under NDA for so long. Like no one knew it was being worked on until Cubicle 7 said, "Hey, this book's coming out," and everyone was like, "What?" We didn't hear about it. And then obviously then it was on sale literally the day after for pre-order. So that'll be interesting to delve into some more and talk about. And that's the book I worked on. And then Shards of Ulkari is out for Wrath and Glory, which is a Eldari scenario for Wrath and Glory. So you can play as Corsairs or Drakari doing, Eldari stuff, dealing with politics and going to a shattered craft world to recover
Oh,
a
sweet.
shard of the Avatar of Cain. Um,
Nice.
so that's fun. I'm trying to think of other fun things game wise. Obviously, I've been playing a lot of War Machine. I've also started the second half of my Necromunda campaign, so that's all good and fun. So I've just painted Magnus, the Invincible. So it's like the Magnus the Traitor in his
Right.
fourth edition incarnation with a massive super heavy warjack. That was a lot of fun to paint.
I was looking at
Uh,
your paint job for that, and I was wondering, is the yellow that you use kind of the standard color scheme for him?
yeah, I think he's
No,
meant to.
cool.
Yeah, it's meant to be a yellow warjack and yellow armor. So it stands out against the rest of my armies because I've got Signar in
Certainly.
blue and Kador in red and Crix in black and green. Let's think. What else? Any other interesting releases? I think obviously from Cubicle 7, I saw that they've got pre-orders. You can pre-order the Player's Guide and GM's Guide to the Inquisition for Imperium Maledictum. They also announced RPG wise the Horus Heresy RPG, which is kind of like you read
Yeah.
into it a bit more. It's basically it gives you a preset kind of like scenario to start from and then to build out from. So it's kind of like a bit
Yep.
of base building and a bit when you really think about it, it's kind of a bit Battlestar Galactica. You're
Oh, sure,
fleeing
sure.
Istavan, the bombing of Istavan 5, 4, 5, can't remember which. One of
Istvan
them.
3 is the
3.
specific one. Yeah.
And you're going to be attacked by heretic fleets as you're fleeing, and then you're going to try and land on go to systems and requisition new resources. So there's a bit of troop play in there. So actually, I think it's
Yeah.
more interesting than it would on the surface appear. That you're not just playing Marines.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for it. Because you got the Battlestar Galactica vibe. I was actually comparing it a lot to Twilight 2000 and how
Yeah,
that's set up, wherein everything breaks down, lines of communication are down. You are up against like a giant force, and you have to flee. And then basically you get to determine what you're going to do from there on,
yeah,
which is what kind of happens in the Horus Heresy. I don't know so much about the books, but definitely in the war game that they have,
Yeah,
there's all
yeah.
these forces that are portrayed as like black shields, some that just kind of go rogue and kind of set up their own domains out in like say the ghoul stars and things. So
Oh,
you get a lot of options to determine what your characters are going to do, and also
what?
the tensions that are associated with that. Because not only do you play as the Space Marines, you also play as, you mentioned the troop style play. You'll be playing as fleet officers, remembrancers, and many others that are in the remnants of
Yeah, I
the
just
shattered
thought,
fleets.
what if you've also got as part of your fleet like a the surviving members of a Titan Legion?
Certainly,
Could we have
certainly, yeah,
playable? Could we have playable troop play where you were like got the crew of a Titan?
you could
That'd
do
be kind
that.
of cool.
Absolutely, absolutely, that'd be pretty cool.
Um, so yeah, other interesting releases RPG wise, Mike, that I've missed. I mean, obviously, I'm very Warhammer and Iron Kingdoms like focused right now.
Yeah, I haven't been too plugged into the RPG verse lately, surprisingly. Um, for what I've been playing, I recently played a game called Slug Blaster,
Mhm.
which is a it's Blades in the Dark adjacent. So it's powered by the apocalypse slash the powered by Blades. I think that was the kind of derivative that they came up with, and you basically play as essentially like 90s skater punks, BMX kids, all that kind of stuff, who can blast through into other dimensions and
Okay,
get into hijinks essentially.
cool.
So yeah, we played one session of that. It was a lot of fun, and we're gonna do another one probably in like April or May. So that'll be pretty neat. And yeah, it's just a streamlined, fast system that's really goofy, but gives you a lot of nostalgic vibes for back in the day. And I'm playing a lot of the old world for Warhammer, so rank and flank, square bases, and all that. And it's actually been a ton of fun playing in a campaign, growing from 500 points. Next time it's going to be 1,000 points, and
Mm.
just assembling like a force to play with. I've
Oh,
mentioned, yeah,
I was
go
going to
ahead,
say
Chris.
what was released, obviously and funded was the expansion books for Cult.
Oh,
So
sure, yeah,
that was,
yeah,
and obviously I contributed a tiny, basically starter scenario for that, but that looks, all the books for that look good fun, and obviously for us, I think, yeah, I've been saying we need to do a deep dive into Cult and run a scenario, so I really need to get
yep,
we need to get on that because we've been promising that for like a year almost. It's just busy, busy, busy. Yeah. Anyway, so back to
yeah.
sorry, old world. Yeah. So you've been having fun with the campaign.
Oh yeah, certainly. So it's been a real blast and kind of unique scenarios. Unfortunately, I drew. So one of the scenarios we're playing was basically like charging down a mountain pass, and you basically need
Right.
to break through and get to your opponent's deployment zone. But my opponent, I'm playing vampire counts, very slow, and
Hmm.
my opponent is dwarves, just a dwarven gun
Uh,
line. Yeah, brutal. So I got tabled. I just got chewed apart. Um, so that was a tough one, but at least
did you have
my opponent was pretty nice, pretty cool, and commiserated with the situation
no
because
way of flanking them? No way of
absolutely no. So there's this thing in Old World, which is a really bad mechanic. I think I mentioned this last time we were talking about it, called line hammer, wherein every single model in the front rank in close combat can make at least one attack. They don't need to be in base to base
right.
contact.
Yeah.
So you could have a model that's 3 feet away, still make an attack.
Hmm.
So dwarves are great at shooting, so they make these giant gun lines. They can have
But they
guns
all
and
get to
great
attack.
weapons.
Yeah.
So, if they weather the storm of your initial assault, they will just take you out. So it's a very it's the
Sounds like you
one
need
big flaw
bats
with.
and sounds like you needed bats and ghosts to spirit hosts to kind of like
Yeah, sure,
ignore
sure,
their
yeah.
gunfire.
Ethereal units would have
Mm.
been good in that situation. I'm playing like the Strigoi, if you remember those guys
Yeah.
from Warhammer Fantasy. So like the kind of bestial
So you got
vampires,
lots of ghouls.
lots of ghouls. So
Mm.
I, I because it's all infantry, I could not get around him.
Yeah,
Literally,
they're gonna get ripped apart.
there was no space. So yeah, I just tried to
Shit.
charge in there with basically a wave of ghouls, and it did not work, unfortunately. But
Wow.
still had an okay time. Um,
I
and
I had
uh,
I
Yeah.
had sort of a similar thing going on with the last game of War Machine I played. So I cracked out the new modular river and that I got, and so we basically had a fight for using the Signar starter command cadre of Kane and Deuce and the gun mages versus the command cadre for Crix, and it was pretty brutal for me as well because it was just like you go, oh, hold on, I've got things that are ethereal, right? No, I had a unit, this elite unit that's ethereal, but obviously, well, incorporeal in War Machine. But of
Hmm.
course, even if I made things and I had spells that could make things incorporeal or abilities that could do that, but of course, even if I did that, what do gun mages have? And what does even the fucking Warjack have? They have
Oh, sure.
magical guns,
Yeah.
so they just like still shooting me and blasting me apart. So all my Warjacks got completely wrecked, and that was not the most fun.
No,
But
not ideal.
but we were matching on victory points for claiming the bridge, so I was able to get a quick claim on it. And then Kane was just a bit too close. And my Warcaster, Nicane Wraithbinder, has an ability to. What was the ability? It was could get across the river in one move without being slowed down because she can spend a focus to do a grapple hook move, so just moves across the terrain.
Cool.
Then was able to do a was able then to pull off a charge directly at Kane and speed herself up, and then when you've only got you've got enough focus to to attack, and you're like, but I need to buy extra attacks, and Kane is a pretty hard target, right? He's got high defense. What's the other thing that Kane has? You can boost and you can boost damage and attack rolls by taking losing hit points. So I was able to
Mm,
use every focus as an attack and just
nice.
chopped up Kane after it. But yeah, I know that was very lucky because it was like it came down to the wire on like pretty much one dice roll to like hit. So, but I know the feeling of like when you just got a gun wall like facing you and everything's just getting blown apart.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was a tough one. It was a tough one, but still a fun experience. And then next campaign event is going to have a bunch of like basically like mutant chaos spawn wandering the battlefield,
Shit.
just to make things really interesting. Yeah, so um, the guy who's running it seems to really like these kind of random things to kind of
Yeah.
potentially turn the tides, which can be good. Let's say you've gotten your force depleted. If you can pull back and then they have to deal with say the chaos spawn, then that gives you some ability to kind of recover and then
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
do some counter charges. So it's been pretty good. And actually, one thing I've noticed playing Warhammer: The Old World, which I don't think I mentioned last time, is that it is a lot more dynamic once you get into some close combats and have units break
Yeah.
because you can charge through, you can reform. So instead of just a line clashing statically, it really does make it a lot more dynamic
Well,
as
yeah,
you can
because
break through the center and
things can fall back. They don't just flee; they fall back gradually,
much,
even.
yeah, yeah,
And
that's much more
so
likely to happen.
it means I think in this version of Warhammer Fantasy, I think you're more likely to see that classic thing where battle lines begin to wheel, and so they
Yep,
rotate, they
yep,
pivot.
that
So
kind of happens.
if you're trying to do an outflank, you've got a very cavalry heavy flank, versus their army. You are going to see the battle lines begin to pivot around the center as the heavier units kind of stand their ground. But that's good. That's how it's meant to be. That's cool.
Yeah,
My next campaign game that I'm running, so the first game we ran for the restart of the campaign was an arbitrator one. So it was a Archaeotech Horde, a
yeah.
multiplayer game for an Archaeotech Horde. And defending the Architect Horde was a man of iron. So he was gunning people
Whoa.
down with a with a assault cannon.
So is that
And
an actual Necromunda scenario, or is that one you just
there,
came up with?
there's I came up with it, and there's rules for a man of iron in one of the
Oh,
books,
holy smokes!
and he does not. He is hard to kill because he keeps regenerating health.
Yeah,
Um,
I feel like there was a short story in the Necromunda novel back in the day where they encountered a Men of Iron. They called it the
Yeah.
Grotesque or something. So maybe that's how they got the
So
inspiration for that.
the next game, the next one, which will be for the other players that didn't take part in that one, and for myself as well, will be we're playing the Gassed Harvest. So it's basically harvesting a bunch of this narcotic. But like the other game that was run, we're going to make sure we're using hostile terrain. So it's going to be filled with venomous mega flora, and so we're making use of the rules out of the Book of Peril just to make this multiplayer game a bit more deadly. And then we'll get into the main campaign where we start fighting for each other's rackets rather than just claiming them. But yeah, it's good fun. And then after that, once the campaign's out of the way, I think I'm going to be fully into a War Machine. I'll set up a War Machine campaign, like do a Journeyman League kind of thing.
Cool.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
I
also
think
do some role play. I haven't done any for ages.
Yeah, it's kind of easier to because war games are a bit structured. You just say, hey,
Yeah,
you bring this, I'll bring that. Let's just play a game. There's
you don't
less
have to
if you
gather
already know the
people.
game and you've got things painted. There's less of the kind of prep work. So
Yeah,
that's a big deal. I think the last thing to bring up in our news and update section is that there's a Gundam miniatures game that's
yeah,
coming out real soon.
yeah.
So that's kind of why we're talking about this. There's also a CCG, which is going to be coming out even sooner. I think it might
I
be like in
think
a
so.
month or
Yeah,
two.
yeah.
And apparently, if you buy the CCG,
You get
like
a Gundam model.
you get 3 Gundam models to use as
Mm,
counters. So it's a way that they can get them out there early. I've seen some photos. I shared them on their Discord, and they look like good models. They're not
they
like wildly out of scale with
no.
other games, which I appreciate. They could fit in with like BattleTech miniatures, Cav miniatures, etc. Um,
Yeah,
and
I
look
mean,
great.
obviously, we should expect some good things because obviously Bandai make good plastics. Like Gundam plastics are another level. I think it'll be interesting to see what the gameplay's like. It's obviously going to be on a hex grid. I don't think they've said it's going to be too crunchy because obviously it's meant to be an introduction to test the waters. So there might be more stuff in future, but it's all kind of all new, but interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. Totally. We can get into our hopes and interest in this later. But I
Yeah,
think we wanted to just talk about Gundam in general and discuss what themes and ideas can be used for gaming, any
yeah.
kind of gaming.
Okay, Gundams. Right. I got into Gundam because Tanami in what fucking year would it be? 1990. I want to say like 1996, 1997. I can't remember when. When did Gundam Wing air
It was the same time
on?
I was watching it then. It was
Yeah.
99.
No, it was before then. It was surely
Yeah,
before then.
yeah, it was 90. Well, at least in the US, it was 99 on Cartoon Network.
Okay, so it says here in 2000 the series was in. Okay,
No, maybe it was 2000.
so list of programs on Toonami. I'm gone to the Wikipedia.
This is
Oh,
this is great.
they showed MS. They showed the eighth MS team. I missed
They
that.
did. They did.
Oh,
Yeah, after
shit.
Gundam Wing was successful.
Yeah. So Gundam Wing. Okay. Wow. Well, apparently it was 2000. So my
Oh,
sense of time is fucked. Um, and then they follow up with other ones later, like Gundam 0080. They also showed
yep.
Seed in 2004. Yeah, so they basically, Gundam. I think Gundam Wing was basically the one which was them trying to like really get into the US Anglosphere market with Gundam anime, and clearly succeeded.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, certainly.
because I think everyone I know of our age got into Gundam because it was on Cartoon Network.
Yep. Yeah, same here. Across the ocean, Toonami had Gundam Wing, and I was randomly flipped through the channels and said, "Whoa, This looks like
Fuck.
Macross, but even more epic.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I was already on to like anime of like Guyver, and I think at the same time on which other one, the other place would it be? I think Fox Kids or whatever it was called after that had Tekkaman Blade, or
I
as the
feel like
US
it.
called it, Techno
Yeah,
Man.
yeah, Techno Man. Yeah, I feel like I saw one episode of that, and it was on UPN. I don't even know if that was in the UK, but yeah, that one was like a real blip over here, at least. It might have been one of
Have
those
you watched
syndicated
all of it?
shows. No, I watched a bunch of
You
episodes,
should.
so I
It's all
remember.
on YouTube.
Oh yeah,
There's a dub. I think there's a
I'll have
dub of it
to
all on YouTube.
I'll have to check it out
Um,
again. But yeah, I remember it because it was like it was kind of similar to Genesis Climber Mospeada, which was the third Robotech
mm,
saga essentially, except the dude was like he literally morphed into the robot and had to take
yeah,
things
yeah.
out, which was pretty cool. Very even more than Mospeada was really really grimdark. Actually, it was a very grimdark
Tekkaman
show.
Blade's fucking bleak.
Yeah,
Um, and share some themes with Gundam. Speaking of which, then, shall we get into like what is Gundam? Like, obviously, Gundam is basically they're big fucking robots, about what anywhere between 15 meters tall upwards, maybe a bit smaller, maybe a bit bulkier. There are some super fucking huge ones in the setting, in the various settings. They're piloted. Some of them are transformable and go from into a vehicle mode where they're basically kind of like jet fighters. Some can be a bit more tanky. Some actually have tank treads instead of legs. Some can split into multiple vehicles, which is what the original Gundam was built from. What else can we say about Gundam? And obviously, Bandai make the model kits, which are
yeah,
these really precision made these days, precision made plastic kits, which put fucking Games Workshop in the dirt with. Basically, I mean, there's no need for glue. They clip together perfectly, and they'll have multiple colors on the same fucking sprues. Um,
yeah.
and even do
That's
injection molding of different plastics together so that when you clip it off, in the case of, say, a hand, it is also articulated. It's mental.
yeah, yeah. Do you know how they do the multiple colors? Is there just one injection port that basically sends in one color plastic,
They've basically
different
got
polystyrene?
you've got all the different injection ports, and obviously they're using software to model the flow of the plastic into the mold, and that way they can precision control where which bits are which color or the type of plastic. I think they're even doing stuff where they're even putting like some bits will be magnetized already on the sprue. Don't quote me on that, but I think that they're getting crazier with what they do.
Dang! Wow,
But
wow,
that
that's
makes
pretty
sense.
wild.
Like you only have to place the magnets into the right place, and then inject the plastic around it, and then it's held in place. So it's just crazy stuff they can do. Obviously, a lot of the work, there's whole competitions to custom build, and paint them. There's obviously spin-offs of Gundam kits. Gunpla is the general name. There's different grades that have different levels of complexity. And customizability to them. There's things like 30-minute missions, which is kind of like Gundam adjacent giant mechs, but they don't have an anime series to it. But you can properly like mix and match parts between. That's kind of cool.
Totally.
But yeah, Gundam comes from. I mean, the original Gundam series is what 1970. Fuck, I can't remember.
1979. Yeah.
1979. So
Yep.
it's coming off the back of Star Wars, basically, and has some. I mean, yeah, giant mechs are cool. They've got weapons of mass destruction and shit. And but if you're a kid, like we were watching Gundam Wing, I think we were initially like, "Well, this is fucking rad. Look at them fight." But the themes are actually pretty strong. Even as a kid, you do recognize the themes of like war is fucking bad. War should be avoided and is avoidable by understanding each other. And you often see the pilots, who are seemingly always kids, um, the protagonists are kids anyway, um, getting frustrated and annoyed at how adults are very set in their ways and believe that is why, these conflicts occur and persist and get repeated. Um, Often the protagonist is pushed into combat. Um, they don't really want to fight, but they do. And um, there's always a general theme of like, humanity is moving into space and it is an important step along the way for humans, kind of like evolution in some way, whether it's societal or biological or technological. Um, yeah. Did I miss anything on the themes there? Or things that in particular stand out to you, Mike?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you covered a lot of the basic things. With the Gundam mecha shows, there's like 20 TV series at this point, something like that. It's
Yeah.
it's a ridiculous amount. Like basically every year one comes out nowadays, and tons of OVAs as well, movies, etc. Um, so it's rather all encompassing, and we're going to talk about a couple that really stand out. But I think why the show it was so enduring when it came out in 1979 was the fact that it came out as like basically a vehicle to sell kids um, cool robot models, essentially, right?
Hmm.
Because it was between Sunrise and Bandai, kind of in a joint venture to do this essentially marketing, similar to like in the United States when we had He-Man, GI Joe, etc. in the 80s. But the fact that they slipped in all these really mature themes uh, about, and a lot of psychological themes as well with the original, with how Ray kind of starts breaking down mentally as the show
Yeah.
goes on. Uh, I think that's why it's endured, because a lot of the people that thought, oh yeah, these are really cool robots, as they went back and watched it later, they kind of saw like the deeper things going on. Um, I mean, in the first episode, the the main character Amuro Ray, it seems like he kills his father. I think that's the
Yeah.
original intent of the show. Like he blows up part of a space station, and his father gets sucked out into the space. They later go back and they retconned that apparently in one of the collection um, compilations, and it's even more bleak. Apparently, when he got sucked out into space, his helmet was cracked, so he had intense oxygen deprivation from the experience
Right.
and basically like had a mental breakdown because of it, which also intriguingly is a real foil to what happens with his son. So yeah, I think that's really, in spite of all the crazy anime antics and the ridiculous power level of the Gundam robots compared to tanks and just mass production mobile suits, there's a real uh, exploration of the psychology of the pilots and the other people that are stuck in this.
Yeah. And I think there's I mean I've looked at like things like I've watched videos that compare like some of the Gundam series like to deal with how they discuss like politics or war and society. And obviously I think the clear thing is that um I think that there's something to be said about where Gundam fits into Japanese society, and there's a conversation clearly going on with these series to the viewers about where Japan is in the world at that time, coming off the back of like World War II and so forth, and how technology um, and the young are going to solve the problems created by the previous generations. Um, there's definitely an element of that.
Yeah, certainly I can see that with definitely the original show.
Yeah.
um Maybe not with Gundam Wing. Gundam Wing's a weird one. We'll talk about that.
Fucking Gundam Wing doesn't have any deep politics
Oh no.
whatsoever.
Okay.
Anyway, so
So
so let's get into it. Yeah. Universal Century. What do we say?
yeah.
Let's
So
do the quick overview. Yeah, shall I do a quick overview of it?
okay, sure.
So Universal Century is the original Gundam setting. It has multiple series that covers what Gundam, Mobile Suit Gundam, Mobile Suit Gundam Zeta, Mobile Suit Gundam Double Zeta, some other OVAs and stuff. Also covers Gundam Unicorn and Gundam Narrative and Gundam. The more recent ones was Gundam Hathaway, and there's also the one they had on Netflix recently. Was it called Gundam Requiem? Yeah, that was the kind of more CGI one.
Mm.
But the general point is that humanity has obviously moved out into space. They've created space colonies. Um, and eventually there is the people in the colonies feel I guess are disenfranchised because they're under the control of what is known as the Earth Sphere, Earth Federation. And they don't like this one iota, and eventually this philosophy um, comes out from a guy called what's his name, Zeon Daikum. I think that's one. Zeom Zum Daikun,
Yep.
who is basically saying, like, humanity should leave Earth alone. It's sacred and should recover. And humanity is basically should be becoming a spacefaring race and move out into the stars. And that this is part of human evolution, and obviously that the colonies themselves should be have some sort of autonomy away from the Federation. And of course this all leads to a fucking war, doesn't it?
Yeah.
War breaks out and some pretty crazy shit happens. So they have already kind of what you would call mobile suits in a form, but they're used obviously in space for construction. And these get further developed by Xeon, the Principality of Xeon, which is leading this war against Earth, into mobile suits, which basically weaponized giant power suits. I guess we can kind of think of them in that sense. And some horrific stuff happens, such as they call it dropping, an entire colony on Australia. So
Yep.
I'm trying to think where it gets wiped out. Is it
Eastern Australia, like Sydney,
Eastern Australia? Sydney gets wiped out.
Melbourne.
Uh,
Pete's in trouble. Pete, you got to move.
yeah. So it's pretty a horrific concept of like literally dropping a giant,
Yeah.
space colony. We're talking something as large as or bigger than Babylon 5 onto a fucking city.
Yeah.
An
Takes
entire
out
region.
part of a continent. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's so bonkers about that, and this kind of goes back to like kind of some of the deeper meanings. One of the tenets of that Xeon fellow was this kind of environmentalist thing,
Yeah, right.
basically recovering the Earth. And what is the first thing they tell you about this war in the first episode of the TV show? They drop a space station and wipe out half a continent. So that kind of shows how like these kind of moral, uh, uh, principles can just get thrown out the window as things get worse and worse. And that's just how the show starts. It's wild.
Yeah. There's some other stuff that gets tied up in Universal Century. So there's the fact that Amuro Ray is the first of, or at least the first known of, a series of people that essentially are what they begin to call new types. This is something part of the Xeon philosophy as well, that there's going to be humans evolving, having grown up, born in space, and essentially they have heightened instincts and senses to allow them to better exist in space. But then also on top of that, in Universal Century, they basically become kind of like Jedi space powers. They can sense people at distance. They can sense attacks before they occur. They can communicate across vast distances. And eventually this all gets tied up in the Gundams themselves. So Gundams themselves are beginner's prototype, but are high-end mobile suits, which eventually incorporate shit that's like where you've got direct human Gundam interaction via what's called a Psi-Commu system, which is basically, and it uses something called a psycho frame eventually. So like in the what is it, Char's counterattack, Amuro Ray's Gundam, Char, who's like a Xeon like ace pilot, leaks to Amuro Ray and his team this technology so he can have a fair fight. And essentially the Gundams have built into their frame this kind of like nanotech that allows the Gundams to kind of like work instantaneously as if it's an extension of your body, plus other ridiculous magical space powers that occur that you see in like in Gundam Unicorn. And I was thinking about this. It kind of gets into this area of like I think Universal Century feels very like trying to say something about like in the same way as like 2001: A Space Odyssey that humans are evolving to even a higher plane of consciousness to make them a truly spacefaring race.
That is an interesting take on it. You know, I never really liked the new types that much because I
So
prefer prefer when this is focusing on just normal people,
yeah,
which is why I really enjoy the Universal Century show called Eighth MS Team. That's just
yeah,
about normal people who are in the jungle getting shot at, and it explores a lot of like the what's happening to them psychologically, but also the civilians as well and
it's
what they do.
why it's why also by the same I think by the same merit, it's why Stardust Memory is also exactly the same idea. There's no new type shit going on. They mention them, but the main characters are not. The principal protagonist and antagonist are not new types. They're just ace pilots in crazy Gundam prototype battlesuits.
Yeah, yeah. But getting back to your point, because I think that's really interesting. And it's a good concept that to explore, wherein going to space will change people, both on a a mental level, but also in this show kind of explores a little bit on that physical level. Um, I feel like
And
this has kind of popped up in some other sci-fi shows as well, like what you call it, Mass Effect a little bit,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Don't people kind of change with psionics and stuff? So it's gone out into some other sci-fi shows as well. Um,
It also primes us for when we get onto Iron Blooded Orphans because I feel Iron Blooded Orphans actually has the tries to make the opposite kind of argument about how we should be evolving and progressing with our technology. Anyway, Universal Century, what else can we say about it? Other than they do more colony drops, I'll tell you this, more colony drops happen. So that principle of Xeon is complete bullshit. Oh,
yeah,
the Earth is sacred. Let's
yeah.
drop another colony.
Ugh, that's rough. Yeah, I
It's
would.
fucking ridiculous.
I did like watching Stardust Memory. That I kind of realized there's all these like giant ruins everywhere in
It's
Australia, which is
fucking
where the show
rad that.
starts, and I'm like, oh, that literally is the space colony. They're literally
Mm.
just fighting in it right now, which was wild. That's a pretty good OVA. It's very 90s. There's some characters that are a little questionable, but man,
Yeah,
it was good
yeah,
so
and the
far. I'm
design,
I'm only on like episode 4.
and the designs of the Gundams and everything, and the characters in that are great because who did I say? I think the people worked on like designers worked on like Cowboy Bebop and Escaflowne.
Really? Okay,
That's
because
that's
I was
why that's why
yeah.
Unit 2 looks more like a Guy Melif from Escaflowne.
Yeah, I was kind of seeing some vibes there. There's also a bunch of scenes that look very similar to ones in Macross Plus, which
Yeah,
is
yeah,
the best Macross anime. So I was wondering if somebody or a couple of people who worked on Stardust Memory also did
undoubtedly.
Macross Plus.
Um, Also, the things that we get happening in Universal Centuries, we get like also offshoots of the military who go like, "Fuck it, we're going to try and take over," and so you get internal fighting. So you get shit like the Titans, who are this elite unit for Earth, and they just then get power hungry, um, and and shit like that. Also, I will say this: like, if you watch the original Gundam, it's okay. It's obviously a thing of its time. Zeta Gundam is bleak as fuck. Double Zeta then is like
Really?
Whiplash because it starts off very ridiculously comedy like and also quite puerile in places and then it gets a bit better once you're past the halfway point. Like I'm watching it, unfortunately I'm not watching it with dubbing because on they don't have it dubbed on things, so like paying attention to it and wanting to pay attention to it is quite fucking hard. Also, Double Zeta establishes a full team of Gundams for the protagonist. So they have the Mark II, the Zeta, the Double Zeta, and the Hayazaki, whatever. It's a prototype that leads to that a prototype for a Gundam. So it's a Gundam type suit. Yeah,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of
And
other stuff like yeah.
are they all piloting like actual Gundams with like the Gundamian alloy or whatever?
Yeah, there's a lunar alloy that they use. That's what makes Gundams what they are. Is they've got this alloy. They might be transformable. They might be built off a core block system, which basically means it's made up of like vehicles that combine together. They generally got like super duper space lasers, and are ridiculously powerful. Yeah, like, and then also in Universal Century, it's quite interesting because like one of the main antagonists, Char Aznable, who's like the child of the Zeomzun Daikon. He's got his own plot of like wanting to reestablish that he's in charge of Zeon because his family were usurped from power, and he kind of like joins the good guys, so he's actually a protagonist in Zeta, and then when he turns
Really?
back up, obviously in Char's counterattack, he's back to being like, I'm gonna finally finish this off and like enact the philosophy of his father. So he's an interesting type. He's you know he's principled, and he's he's a new type before they knew what new types are. I will also say that in Unicorn there's a whole plot line of something called Laplace's box. So it's basically this idea that when Earth kind of comes to the idea that there is this new era, which they call the Universal Century, the formation of the Earth Federation writes into its kind of like constitution that if a new type of evolved human appears, they should allow autonomy of these people in space. And that's a plot point because that line in the constitution gets deleted or is forgotten about, and it's on this original writing of the constitution. So that's basically the plot line of part of the plot of Unicorn, is reasserting the true principles of the Universal Century and correcting, because of that, if that was known, then the war between Earth and the Principality of Xeon would never have happened, or at least would have been less likely to have happened.
Sure.
So yeah, that's Universal Century. There's lots of it. It's a bit mad and weird in places, and has basically space Jedi. In
Chris, if you had to recommend one Universal Century show to start with, which would it be?
Yeah. Fuck it. Just watch. If you're gonna watch anything, I would watch Unicorn. Is good. Narrative is mental, but leads on from Unicorn. Watch Stardust Memory. I mostly say watch the 8th MS Team on the same principle. Those two, I'm sure, give you enough to watch. Fuck the rest of it. It's dated and crazy in places. Right, shall we talk about our first love and then our first hate? Shit, Wing. Right, what do we?
Gundam
do you
Wing.
Do you want to cover Gundam Wing? Because damn,
yeah. I can do this. I've only seen a couple episodes since the year 2000.
I've rewatched it.
I'm a little fuzzy, but So the idea of Gundam Wing is that there's a bunch of colonies out in space, and there's a evil Earth regime that's been oppressing them, and they're trying to break free, but they haven't been able to yet. Earth in this case is not a horribly polluted place. It's actually, pretty much what we know today. It's got its issues, etc. And I guess there are nations on Earth, but they're all, I believe, different than the ones that are in our actual real world. I'm actually trying to remember. I think it's a unified Earth government.
It is a unified Earth government.
Yeah. So nations are kind of a thing of the past. Colonies are trying to break free, so they send 5 expertly trained kids with their own experimental Gundams in an operation called Operation Comet. They go to Earth and they start to fight back. And the show pretty much revolves around them, these 5 Gundam pilots, of which Duo Maxwell is the best. And also some other side characters. There's this gal, Relina, who has really
bad choices in boyfriends.
That really naive understanding of politics.
Yeah.
and very naive understanding of the concept of like non-violent just standing up to governments and the like, or stopping war by just getting rid of all of your weapons, not their weapons. They can keep their weapons. You just need to drop all your weapons and they'll stop fighting you. very strange things. A lot of her ideas don't work out, but I think in the end, her ideas do work out, and they like make a new, um, much more nice Earth government.
Yeah,
And there's also a character named Zex. He's just Char with a
he's
different
just
face
Char.
mask.
He's wears a face mask.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And yeah, he's part of an old royal bloodline, kind of similar to Char. But he's like kind of working with the bad guys, but also kind of working with the good guys. He's got that kind of thing going on.
he has the best Gundams, by the way. I think
The
he has. Yeah.
Yeah, Tall Geese was
No,
good.
I like the
And the
Epion.
yeah, that's the red one, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a cool one. A lot of great mech designs in Wing. I mean,
Oh
you can
yeah.
see why,
It's
from a toy
it,
selling standpoint, they went
yeah.
with it.
I think the wing is. It's just there's. I think the problem is that protagonist is just like a fucking sociopath. Like, and he's willing to self-destruct his Gundam at every fucking opportunity
Yep.
because he's just like, oh, I've lost, blow up the Gundam, and you're like, dude, like, chill the fuck out.
Yeah,
um,
there was one episode I saw like he not only tries to blow up his Gundam, but he tries to blow up Duo's Gundam as well.
what a
He's
what
like,
a cocksucker! What an absolute dick. Um, so yeah, it's really. I mean, basically, the whole principle is like, the Gundams are trying to like basically destroy, mainly targeting the organization within the Earth government known as Oz, which developed the weaponized mobile suits, which happened to be developed from the first prototype Gundam, which we mentioned, called Tall Geese, which is then piloted by Zetz. They discovered Zetz is like, fucking hell, this thing I thought was an antique is actually top of the range. Um, and eventually it gets to the point where, oh, there's a lot of shit going on. And again, they're trying to, I think almost a colony drop type event happens, but it's a big space station. There's development of AI run battle suits called mobile dolls.
oh yeah,
So
yeah,
it's all basically ultimately the goal is to eliminate mobile suits from warfare because clearly they're the ultimate weapons in all of this. Yeah, I mean, an interesting thing I was thinking about with this is, and I was wondering about this with one of the technology things that's often used in, especially in Gundam Wing, they call them wing binders, which are like the little faux kind of like feathers on their jets and stuff, especially on like
mm,
on Wing Zero. And I
yeah.
was thinking about it and I was reading it. It's like, okay, that kind of makes sense. And it makes sense why Gundams are human body like types as well. Because if you think about it, with your in zero G, with your limbs, you can actually, under the conservation of momentum principles, you can reorientate yourself. So having more limbs, in other words, these wing binders, combined with jets, allows you to
Uh,
orientate yourself.
that's a good idea, yeah, because it's either you do it that in the Gundam way, or you do it like Babylon 5 with the Star Furies, where you just have
Yeah,
tons of little boosters to maneuver. Hmm.
exactly. So if you combine, a human body with Star Fury boosters, so you've got Vernier jets, you've got a Gundam, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Gundam Wing, would you would you recommend as a starting point? Fuck no.
I mean, if I was in sixth grade again,
Yeah.
sure, why not?
I'd watch it as an adult with a good drink. Um take a
Yeah,
shot every time Hero tries to blow shit up. Yeah.
yeah, it's
It's and
hilarious.
Sex is a classic kind of like, um classic like uh he's not a villain, he's an interesting protagonist in some respects. I'm gonna jump in our notes. I'm therefore gonna jump to Gundam 00 because it's basically
Okay.
Gundam Wing but better, right?
Oh,
So,
oh, okay.
you've got this group called Celestial Being who are created by a philosopher called. Oh, I've got the notes here. Like called. That's not him. Celestial Being is created by a philosopher scientist um, called where can I called Alia Schoenberg, and essentially, I think it's the philosopher. He designs a supercomputer. He designs what are these called GN drives. They're kind of like solar. They're solar reactors. They mimic fusion within the sun and so forth, and do other
Cool.
superpower type shit. But basically, he's got a supercomputer and also uses genetically enhanced humans, artificial humans called innovades. So they're kind of like new types, while also waiting for natural born innovades to occur called innovators to and with the Gundams then as a weapon is a way of like eliminating war altogether. And so you've basically got a computer that is trying to predict where wars are going to happen and try and steer humanity into the most peaceful route to get into space and
Ah,
therefore become, you know, a spacefaring race. There
yeah.
aren't colonies in the same way as in Universal Century and Wing. There are giant space elevators. There are numerous different Earth organizations that have their own mobile suit technologies. So, Celestial Being is this kind of like peacekeeping slash terrorist organization of 4 Gundam Meisters piloting their various Gundams to stop war. And they go on what are called armed interventions, which I just
Oh,
love.
jeez. That's literally what they call it?
Yeah, they go
Oh
on
my
another armed
goodness.
intervention.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, basically, it's Wing but better, and I feel, um, and also what's interesting about the series is that there's 2 seasons to it, and uh, there are and eventually there's a movie that follows it which actually introduces an alien race which I think is as a
What?
antagonist group. So it's the
That's not
first
usually in
Gundam
Gundam.
series that has aliens, which is
Yeah. Huh.
interesting. So I think that's as much as I'm going to say without spoiling it. Like, it's basically Wing but better. And
Yeah.
essentially, when the GN drive on the Gundams go, fucking nuclear, the Gundams essentially start doing like quantum physics based nonsense. So you don't have people with superpowers in the same way as like the new types. They're just really like human supercomputers in that sense, which makes a bit more sense, maybe. Anyway,
Ooh,
um,
I
I
mean,
th-
I want to check that one out.
I think that takes us on happily then to Iron Blooded Orphans, which is like the best Gundam series going, right?
Well, I've only seen a few episodes of it, and I wasn't totally sold. And that was
I think
mostly
it.
because of the characters,
Oh
the setup
fuck!
for it, the geo, well, no, the solar politics of it. I thought was
Is fucking
really
great.
really good. It's a very interesting one. So, I'll let you talk about more of this because
Okay,
have
I'll
seen
go
all
for
of
it.
it.
You
But I
interject.
can at least set up. I can at least
Set it
set up
up.
that
Yeah.
Mars got terraformed,
Woohoo!
and at this point, it's been kind of decolonized. Like there's different nations on it. They have their freedom, but really they're still kind of on under the economic heel of Earth, whether it be Earth corporations or Earth nations. So it as you point out, really kind of reflects sub-Saharan Africa, but in space, wherein there's these kind of arbitrary nations that kind of have formed, but they have their own wars and struggles. If I remember correctly, the main characters are on. They've got like kind of a land ship where they're like a mercenary company moving around, at least at the start. But I'll let you take
Mm.
it away, Chris, with some more of the details.
Yeah, so the kids are part of I can't remember the fucking name of the group, but basically, they're a lot of the children who are used to pilot various types of mobile suit mecha are what are called human debris. So they're basically the orphans of war and are used as essentially weapons because kids are perfect for manipulating with a nanite process that allows them to then synchronize with mobile suits. So no one has superpowers in this in any way. They are instead augmented with nanites, and it leads to bad shit, like seriously bad shit for the main character. I can't remember the main character's name right now. So the kids then like form a group called Tekkadan, and essentially a mercenary corporation with the aim of taking this let's just say gentry lady girl from Mars to Earth to basically go Mars should be its own nation. and should be recognized in that way. And at the same time, they're having to deal with the fact that there is another group called Galahorn who are basically, I'd like to think of them as neo feudalists because they're basically a group of families who are descended from pilots of Gundams. So
Oh,
um,
interesting.
they try and be a peacekeeper force, but you can see it's kind of like their influence has grown so large that they're kind of exploiting it. Um, the Gundams in the series are a number of Gundams named for each of the demons in the Gotia, um, and essentially were designed to fight against these AI-driven weapons called mobile armors. They also kind of which had the mobile armors had names based off angels, which I find fun.
Cool.
So yeah, and the group were called the group of pilots, the core group of pilots that formed Galahorn were called the Seven Stars because each one of them killed one of these mobile armors using a Gundam. There aren't many Gundams left. They differ from regular mobile suits. They have two reactors known as Ahab reactors. We'll talk about those briefly. And yeah, like if you synchronize fully with a Gundam, it starts to fuck up your body. Like you lose use of your limbs when you're not connected to the Gundam. You may lose eyesight, causes you to bleed from the nose, shit like that. The load or the stress on your body becomes extreme.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of the Titans in Warhammer 40,000.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's a good call out. Other things that are interesting then. Ahab reactors, when they turn on, put out Ahab particles that partly allows them, I think, gives them artificial gravity, I think, on ships. It's related to that. The other thing is, though, it knocks out electronic communications and electronics in general. So that's why you can't have Gundams or mobile suits within city limits, apparently. So they're banned for that reason. Obviously, that obviously happens as part of war. The Tekkadan obviously then establish themselves almost as an equal to Galahorn. They form relationships with other mercenary and cartel groups. The politics is deep. Lots of main characters die. In fact, spoiler alerts here, almost all the main characters die in this. All the protagonists die, which is quite shocking. A lot of the weaponry in the series is also rather by Gundam series merits are low tech, because Gundams have something called, or most mobile suits as well, have something called nanolaminate armor, which basically makes them impervious to laser, plasma, energy based weapons. So everything's gone fucking medieval. There's no beam sabers that we've seen in Gundam Wing, or beam scythes if you like your fucking death scythe. Everything's got like massive maces, humongous swords and axes, and rather more traditional explosive weaponry. And then ultimately, the mega weapon in the series is these what you call them, propelled by EM weapons. What the hell did you call EM
Like a
propelled?
Gauss rifle.
Yeah, Gauss rifle weaponry. So they have this like armor piercing Gauss rifle weaponry, which is a main plot point. Yeah, I love it. I love it for its politics. I love it for its technology. I love it for that you don't have basically space Jedi, space Jesus shit going on. It's the point it makes at the end is like children shouldn't be manipulated and augmented for war. The end point is, mobile suits are pretty much, outlawed and removed. Gundams are disassembled and and hidden away.
Hmm.
And that's how it ends. So it's very, whereas like Universal Century is all about humans going to evolve into a better form. This is about maybe we shouldn't be using technology in this way to evolve. Like this is the shit route to
Yeah.
become better.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's Iron
That's
Blooded Orphans in a nutshell. Fucking watch it. It's great.
all right.
Any other points
I,
on that one you want to raise that you like about it that you
no,
probably thought?
no. I
Okay.
mean, I should probably watch it. You've mentioned it so many times as being great.
It's fucking brilliant.
It's just my challenge with so many of these Gundam shows is that I start watching, I'm like, oh, it's another show about high school kids piloting giant robots. But it seems like this one they actually really do a much more deeper analysis into that,
Oh,
which I appreciate.
there's actual proper like societal shit in that. Okay, I'm gonna cover Gundam Seed quickly here. Gundam Seed is, I think, next to Universal Century, mostly has the most. Then is the next with like the most amount of stuff put out because it has two seasons. Like the first Gundam Seed has two seasons, or at least two definite halves. Um, it has a second season, second series called Gundam Seed Destiny. There's a movie that's just come out. There's a lot of spin-off stuff as well. It's effectively
Really? Mm.
a bit Gundam wingy in like there are multiple Gundam suits, and it's kind of like this. I would describe it actually. I would think it's kind of a bit of a merger between a bit of Gundam Wing with Universal Century. So the basic principle is this: humans go into space. As part of this process, some dude does some eugenics. It has been and created someone that they who proclaims himself when he gets into space. He proclaims himself he's this genetically modified person as I am the coordinator of whatever. So essentially, it establishes that there are genetically augmented portions of humanity going into space, creating space stations, living there, called coordinators, who have been created to exist in space. There's coordinators, and then there's normal humans, normal types. Or what they call as naturals. So that's the conflict, is basically a eugenics conflict. They're not psychic or anything. They're just better at doing things faster, a bit more like innovators in that sense. There's multiple mecha types. So essentially, it starts off with the colonies have already made dangerous mobile suits to fight Earth, who they see as as kind of oppressive. Earth, in response, makes 5 Gundams. One is the main Gundam, which is Strike, which can take multiple backpacks called silhouettes, which give it different weapon types and different, battlefield roles. Whereas the other 4 Gundams, is it 4 or 3? 1, 2, 3. Maybe it's 3. It's 3. They are more specific in their battlefield role. Actually, it might be 4. Yeah, it is 4. And they're stolen by the Zaft, which is the colonies. And so basically it becomes a chase thing in the classic, like the classic series. Like they're trying to defeat this spaceship which carries the protagonist Gundam. The protagonist Gundam is a childhood friend of the antagonist protagonist leader of the group in from the colonies. So it's kind of
Okay.
like a Chaz Zet
Classic
kind of,
Char thing. Yeah.
yeah, nothing but less of a dick. Then there's a missing. The main character turns out is actually a coordinator himself. He has a twin sister who isn't a coordinator because his dad was a dick, and his dad is the one that did the experiments to create coordinators. There's anti-nuke technology because one of the colonies got nuked by Earth, and so this anti-neutron kind of technology is developed to basically quench nuclear reactions and stop nukes. The mechs, the Gundams have this phase shifted armor, which basically makes them hard to kill. There's also hints of aliens having existed at one point in Jupiter's atmosphere, so they're kind of like gaseous life forms. So you see it as this like skeleton that's being discovered.
Oh.
Um,
Whoa.
and a lot of the plot also has a lot of love story, romance stuff going on. It's ridiculous in places. It is ridiculous, and I would say it's ridiculous, but it's more palatable than Wing
Sure.
because it
Sure.
remixes a whole lot of things. And there is a true Chart Aznable kind of like type character who's fucking mental and wants to just annihilate all of humans because he's just like got a stick up his ass about it all.
Hmm.
And there's huge space weaponry. They don't do colony drops, but they've got weaponry that could literally like blast apart, part of the moon and shit like that. Yeah, you also get to see some Gundam type or mobile suits, which are like more quadruped type vehicles. So getting a bit Zoid like, interesting. Zoid.
Ah. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I like it. I need to watch a new film. I think it rates for me because it's ridiculous. It rates lower than Double Zero and above Double Zero's I'm Blooded Orphans for me with Stardust Memory
Okay.
quite high up. Okay, shall we get
Yeah.
rattle through the next ones
Well,
because I know them less well. Uh,
yeah. I mean, we don't need
G
to cover this
Gundam.
too much. The only reason why I put G Gundam on this list
Fucking
is
hell.
because this is the second um Gundam Century, Gundam universe that they ever made after Universal Century. And they only made one show and then never came back.
It's come on,
I
it's just basically Gundam Dragon Ball, right?
Yeah, they're just, giant robot duels. Basically these different orbital space stations which represent different nations are battling it out instead of fighting wars, which is precisely the plot of the movie Robot Jocks.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just got a ridiculous screaming dude who actually kind of does look like Goku from Dragon Ball,
Hmm.
just battling with a new robot every week. And there's over uh, uh,
Isn't
uh,
isn't one of
over
them like a
plot.
giant windmill? Isn't one of them a Gundam
I think
windmill?
so. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
one was
Fucking hell.
just like I think like the Scottish one just has a giant log that he's just throwing at the guy.
Fucking hell.
It's actually it's Gundam's offensive cultural
Yeah, it is.
stereotypes
It
to
is.
show.
It is. It's terrible in that sense.
Um,
Um. Okay.
but
Uh.
I wanted to bring up G Gundam because I do feel like, on the other hand, that this is probably kind of the closest to what we'll see for the Gundam miniatures game, at least as it starts. It's going to be,
Yeah.
just a couple of Gundams duking it out, and they'll have a lot of crazy abilities and stuff. We'll see if the game grows from there, but I think G Gundam, maybe they got it right in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing that's noted in all this, like what makes a Gundam in each series is kind of different each time. Like, with Universal Century, it's the prototype Gundams, and they finally get the Psycommu Psycho Frame shit. In Double Zero, it's the fact they've got these GN drives within Wing. It's because they use Gundanium or Gundarium alloy, whichever it's called. In Seed, it's that the Gundams have generally like these ridiculous operating systems that make them so powerful, and other expert technology. Um, and then in Iron Blooded, like I say, in Iron Blooded Orphans, they're like these limited number, almost like mythical kind of nature to them. Um, Gundam X, I've only just started watching, but essentially the starting point is take Universal Century, take the colony drop, multiply it by about 20 or more. That's what happened to Earth. So Earth is fucked.
Oof.
Um, the multiple Gundams were built to fight against the colonies, and Gundam X is the protagonist Gundam, the last of its kind. Um, it powers up from basically like space radio energy. So there's one power station left on the moon, which I think basically is like taking solar energy and radio beams it down to Gundam X, and then it powers up its ridiculous abilities, and it can fire off, massive weapon. So I need to finish watching that one, so I can't talk too much more about that. Witch from Mercury is the one that came out more recently. Basically, the premise is that some humans got into space, blah 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 blah. One group of humans start developing what are known as gunned arms, which is a technology which is like prosthetics, but it also extends to these battle suits. And the way they're developing them is seen as prescribed technology, and so they're termed as witches by the Earth, unified forces. And some stuff happens where you kind of like you mentally combine with the Gundams. It means that there's some really weird shit because the mother of the protagonist is the one that's properly developed this Gundam technology. And this total spoilers, her original daughter basically fused with the Gundam. So it does what's called, I'm trying to think,
Whoa.
it has a feedback system, so it starts harming the user, but also to the point where their consciousness is within the Gundam. To get around this and to try and get back her original daughter, the main protagonist, who the mother, so the main antagonist, the mother wears a mask, so she is our Char Aznable type.
Okay. Yep.
She clones her daughter multiple times in order to try and bring back her original daughter to get closer to her and to kind of like perfect this technology. So
Huh.
it's really brutal on the main character. Meanwhile, essentially, there's a school for technology that allows students to develop their mobile suit knowledge, technology, skills that involves therefore mobile suit duels. And there is one girl who is like the daughter of like the main family or everything, and is essentially up for grabs, like is the prize of these duels. So it's very revolutionary girl attainer
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
finally now have a lead character, lead female character Gundam pilot who has won in a competition this other main female character. So there are obviously there is essentially we've got lesbian protagonists in it, which based upon everything else previously in Gundam, I see as a good thing to have diversity in that way. But clearly, it is revolutionary girl Utena with
Yeah.
Gundams.
It
That's
is
all I'm gonna
with
say.
with a strong backdrop of Evangelion as well, with that cloning and like
Oh
soul
shit! Yeah,
retrieval
I've
plot.
totally
Yeah.
forgot about that. Yeah,
Holy smokes.
she's there's a bit of Shinji shit going on in this. Um,
LOL.
fuck's sake.
Shinji getting the Gundam.
Yeah, right. Um, and then I'll finish off with the most recent thing, like we said on Netflix. It's Universal Century, so I'll mention it actually now. Gundam Requiem is interesting. So it takes place during the 1 year war with the Xeon forces having invaded Earth. But the protagonists are actually you follow are members of Xeon, which is interesting, trying to escape the planet. As Earth has repelled them and developed their own
Mhm.
mass-produced mobile suits, but they're also chased by another Gundam unit, so another prototype Gundam
Yeah.
unit. So the basic premise of Gundam Requiem is the Gundam that's chased them is almost like a slasher. They're fucking
Love it.
shitting themselves
Love it.
every time it
That's great.
appears.
That's
It just
great.
rips apart another mobile suit, and they're terrified of it. So I found that quite an interesting flip on the narrative and why war is bad, and stuff like that. Um, let's finish off quickly then with Gundam adjacent stuff you should watch if you like this stuff. Watch Evangelion, obviously, because the new series Gundam Quarks is made by the same people as Evangelion,
Oh,
and that's airing soon in April in the US and I hope in the UK. I think on Prime. I may be wrong. Escaflowne, if you like giant battle suits but in a fantasy setting, they're fucking rad. Escaflowne is quite cool in that sense. There's also a film which takes Escaflowne, the TV series, and does a few remixes. Macross, giant battle suits.
yep.
Variotech, aircraft that turn into robots
Yep.
to
Totally.
fight with. Um, obviously, people get defeated by singing in that series. Fucking hell.
There's a yeah. It gets ridiculous
Yeah.
as you go.
Tekkaman
Um,
Blade. What more do we
mhm.
say? It's basically Guyver, but more mecha versus space aliens and other Guyver type units, which are the Tekkamans.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Code Geass is I basically call it as Gundam but Death Note because the main
Yeah.
character
Totally. Totally.
is a fucking psychopath in the same way as Light Yagami in Death Note.
Yeah.
He's got special power
Absolutely.
to manipulate people, and there's the mecha designs in it are fucking rad as well. So that's cool. And then Votoms, I don't know.
Yeah, so Votoms is another Sunrise show which came out just after Gundam, but before Gundam Zeta, because there was like a couple years where
Right.
they were still figuring that stuff out, and they're like, oh, well, we'll just do these other mecha shows. So it's a really grim, dark one of like far future space robots fighting, um, and the main character has like real crazy trauma. Um, there's another one I don't have this on this list, which also I believe is Sunrise, which is Fang of the Sun Dugram, which I was watching a little bit of, and that one's like kind of Gundam, but even more political, to the point where
Oh,
they have 2 episodes which are just about like land redistribution after a colony gets its
that
independence.
I mean, there's so many more. Like, there's the one that was what was it called? It was on Netflix a while ago called Knights of Sidonia. There's that. There's also, if you also like another mecha kind of fantasy one, there is it it's August. I think it's August Saga.
Uh,
Yeah,
there's super
August
dimensional.
Super Dimension Century August, and there's
Yeah, sure.
uh
Yeah.
August. I think it's mostly August 3. Um, Let me just put in August 3.
Oh, I didn't know that there was multiple Orgus shows. I thought there was just the one
It's
from the
more of a
80s.
movie. I think it's August. Anyway, so there's that. That's an interesting one. Um, there's more mecha fucking series that you can shake a stick at.
Yeah. Yeah,
Some
not
are
as
less
many as there
adjacent.
used to be, I would say, but it's
Yeah,
still, at least Gundam is going strong.
like if you go on fucking Crunchyroll, all it seems to be is I died and reincarnated into a fucking computer game series.
Yeah.
Which is like the one I've watched a bit of is I died and reincarnated as a slime is fucking ridiculous. It's obviously there's tons of like cheesecakey fucking fan servicey cringe in them. I think that's one thing
Yeah.
I say about Gundam generally is I mean it happens, but they feel less cringy than a lot of other anime out there. Um
Yeah, certainly. Not, at
anyway,
least the ones I've seen don't have much fan service or anything.
yeah.
They're not really interested in that. Um, yeah, so let's talk about games, though. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a gaming podcast, and Gundam obviously can inspire a lot from miniatures games and RPGs. I think, given that there is a Gundam miniatures game coming out, I think I want to talk about that a little bit
Yeah.
because I think it's quite interesting. I was looking around on Board Game Geek and other things, and I didn't really see another Gundam like war game. You know, we have BattleTech, but that's more like slow plotting mechs. Cav is similar
Yeah.
to that. Um, there is Jovian Chronicles, which has a
Mhm.
similar feel, but it's actually primarily space based. And there's like kind of space fighters flying around, giant robots zipping around, blasting things. I think also you can get up to like cruisers and destroyers and stuff.
Yeah. There's also like homebrew Gundam games out there that people have like
Sure.
self-published that use Gundam miniatures. That's obviously to be expected.
Yeah.
Um and then I think there's elements we see of Gundams in other games as well. Like look at the Tau for fuck's sake in Warhammer
Sure.
40,000. Like
Yeah, the new crisis suits, obviously similar to mobile suits in their name, are definitely extremely Gundam inspired. I know people said it was Gundam inspired when the original battle suits came out in what, like 2002 or whatever, whenever the tower released. But yeah, now it's much more obvious with their kind of Gundam feel. Um, yeah,
yeah.
and you have a couple notes here about like Xeogenesis, a new game coming out.
Yeah, I've seen there's obviously people are getting their previews. Dave at MS Paints has looked at it and got a preview models and rules. So this is a new game by the rules are being developed by Andy Chambers and Jake Thornton. The mecha are much smaller though. We're talking like either human-sized power suit type shit or a bit or somewhat bigger, but not like 15-foot tall. That we're talking really more the type of things of like that feel more Ghost of the Shell adjacent rather than Gundam
Okay.
adjacent. So that is that's where that really goes to. So I guess
Yeah.
you get some of that feel. Um yeah, Board Game Geek. I was like, yeah, giant robot mecha war games. Oh yeah, they had GKR Heavy Hitters that came out a while. That I remember that on Kickstarter. It was a hex based one.
Yeah,
But
I don't know it,
yeah,
unfortunately.
there isn't. You begin to look through the list, and there isn't really. Oh, Horizon Wars is one by. I do remember that's more of a
Yeah.
generic
But
sci-fi game, which is
yeah,
miniatures agnostic.
and it's more combined arms, right? So it has infantry and tanks and giant robots, right?
Obviously, there was the Robotech RPG Tactics. Less said about that, the better,
Oh, okay.
maybe.
Not well, it might have been an okay game, but obviously the Kickstarter was a huge kerfuffle.
Oh, of
Um
course, Heavy Gear.
yeah, so Heavy Gear I was going to mention. Actually, I mentioned it, you see, in the RPGs further down the show notes. Heavy Gear doesn't have a Gundam feel. It's actually heavily inspired by Votoms to the point where like they have roller skates basically that they're zipping around on.
Right.
But Heavy Gear, yeah, Heavy Gear is obviously, I mentioned Jovian Chronicles, also by DreamPod 9. Heavy Gear does have a little bit of that DNA, but it's a bit more grounded and about just having massed troop type
Yeah.
mecha rather than just having one superpowered one, perhaps against another superpowered one or against a bunch of Xeon mobile suits. I can't remember their name right now.
Yeah.
You know
I
the
think
ones.
I think there's going to be though,
So
like when you look at it, there's going to be a slew of mecha RPGs because, like, Gundam is like in vogue. But I think,
sure,
and obviously, caveat here, I will be designing one for to tie in with Eldritch Automata, which we'll speak about in a minute. Um,
sure, sure.
but yeah, I think your notes about what you would want if it's a Gundam specific miniatures game,
Yeah,
I agree with. Like, because Gundam series, like, Gundams are fucking fast moving. Mobile suits in general
exactly,
are fast
exactly.
moving. They're not plodding mecha. They are in some respects. I think about this a bit harder. Like, it should feel like War Machine on drugs.
That's exactly what I was thinking. You know, War Machine has great movement dynamics to it.
Yeah,
I think if you kind of took those base ideas, but then added in a lot of reactions, um, that would give you that kind of fluid movement of the mobile suits. Because what you see a lot, at least in the show, not saying this is a good game design, but in the show, um, a mecha will pop out, they'll shoot at the other guy, they'll react by either dodging behind cover, doing the return fire, or maybe like making a cloud of dust or something so that they can get away. There's all this kind of like this flow, this give and take that you'll see,
yeah.
which makes the battles very exciting to watch, and I think also would make it really exciting to play as well.
And yeah, the movement is important because also the Gundams like get up close and personal with other, mobile suits in general get up close and personal. So they're not just like, trading gunfire. They're trading close combat attacks. They're quite happily throwing each other through buildings and stuff. And and locking arms and stuff. So it's, yeah, a game, it would have to be really fast flowing, and I guess to get that, I, it tells you where the crunch in the game should be, like
Mm,
where it should be about moving and reactions and dynamic combat. It shouldn't be about, in that kind of mech warrior way of like, has the gun cooled down? Can I fire it again? Like, that's great in,
yeah,
say, Adeptus Titanicus, where you know, have to deal with like overheating plasma drives. But I don't. How often do you see a Gundam pilot complaining about an overheating drive? Fucking never. Um,
no,
so RPGs. Obviously, I've mentioned Eldritch Automata, but Eldritch Automata, I mean, I guess you could use as a starting point when it's out and do some modifications. But Eldritch Automata is obviously set up more to be kind of an Evangelion um,
sure,
uh,
yeah,
inspired RPG setting. Though I guess some of the ideas in that for the pilots and how they operate with their mechas could be refitted and reskinned to kind of represent, new types, innovators, coordinators, whatever you want. Um, so that the pilot still matters while they're in the battle suit, and have, profiles and stat lines and abilities that take effect. I've not actually really, though, other than writing for Eldritch Automata and that, I've not played or know much about other big mecha RPGs other than
yeah.
maybe Exalted with their Escaflowne Guy
Oh,
Maleth inspired war suits.
yeah. I forgot about those. I forgot about those.
Fucking Exalted,
Th-
man.
those are. those are pretty Gundam-like. I don't know. I've never seen those used in Exalted in a game.
And then the
I don't
mental.
know how the rules work. It's probably a mess in second edition. Too complicated in
Yeah, it
first
was.
edition.
It's terrible.
Yeah. Uh,
Um,
I I don't know if they're even in third edition, but
yeah.
I I we know some people. We can ask them what the Exalted status is. So there's actually another game I have here on the list of mecha inspired RPGs, which is actually kind of similar to the Exalted one. It's called Remnant. It's
Okay.
kind of a far future neo feudalism, wherein some people have these kind of escaflowne sort of giant robots that they can use. It's pretty cool. It's got two books. It's very light RPGs, not mechanically heavy. But unfortunately, I haven't played it. Should check it out sometime.
There's a few others that we've not mentioned. There's one I
There's
was thinking.
certainly for Gundam inspired. There is Mechton,
Yeah.
which was from Art Talsorian Games, but that one's so mechanics heavy. It's it, I would not play it in 2025.
Oh, I'm trying to think of one I saw at UK Games Expo.
There's one called Mecha, which is pretty good. I used to have the book, never played it. Um, that one I think actually does try to get
Let
some
me
of those
just.
kind of Gundam
I'm just trying to find.
fluid
Uh,
movements and reactions in a
yeah.
RPG
Oh,
format.
there's it's Salvage Union by Leyline Press. Um, so I
Mm,
feel though that again veers the mech design and I think approach veers closer to BattleTech rather than Gundams.
okay,
And that's
yeah.
the dial you're dealing with here is do you care about overheating weapon systems and shit like that, or do you just want like is the Gundam, is the battlesuit, the mecha really more of an extension of the main character of the character you're playing? And I think that's what you're looking for in what defines something to be more Gundam like versus something else.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, I would say that we talked about the movement and reactions being really important for a miniatures game. But Chris, you have some notes here about sacrifice, consequences, and perhaps stress being more
yeah,
important for an RPG revolving around
Yeah,
this
because
mecha.
I think from what we've said of what Gundam series are like, that I think you could get easily bogged down in picking your RPG system or designing it for a Gundam like series and thinking it's all about the mecha and the weapons. When really that is just a means for moving the narrative along. And the narrative process of a Gundam series is really rooted in the fact that these characters are having to deal with a war they don't want to be involved in, with sacrifices they don't want to have to make, with choices and deaths that they don't want to deal with or conduct, killing people unless you're Hero Yui. Um, and and dealing with the psychological trauma of all of that. And I feel that is essentially why you have to look at a system that enables that sort of plot line and play style versus something that's more crunchy. So that's why, like, I guess you could easily turn, Powered by the Apocalypse, Blades in the Dark type systems, or the Resistance system by Rowan Rook and Descartes. Um, so that's the system that's used in Spire and that we're using for Trash Humanism. Um,
Mm,
that I feel might work better for a Gundam uh, type RPG experience.
yeah, yeah, I concur. I don't think trying to model the simulationist
Yeah,
combat of the mecha is where you should focus,
fuck
and
me.
I think it is just going to become tedious.
It'll become Exalted First Edition or Second Edition, one of the two. It'll be that bogged
Oh,
down.
oh no! Don't say it, Chris. Don't say it.
It would be that fucking bogged down and slow. It would you would basically be playing it, and the moment the characters get into the mecha, you'd be like, oh, for fuck's sake, like combat's going to take 3 hours, because it would do.
Yeah.
If you went the simulationist route. So yeah, I think our advice is like in terms of like designing something is don't be simulationist with it. Like, a laser gun is a laser gun, and often, you know, a Gundam is more than happy and capable of wiping out multiple other mobile suits. And so those roles, those decisions are quite easy. The challenge, where things matter, and it's a question of which pilot has the greater will or willing to make the sacrifice, will be between protagonist, antagonist, and antagonist, who are often the ace pilots piloting some super duper battlesuit. Um, and
Yeah.
the battlesuit is just the extension of that will, that drive, that requirement to change the world in some way, you know. So ultimately, the RPG is all about going on an armed intervention, right? Like,
Yeah. There was there was an RPG, I can't remember the name of it, but you basically kind of play as Space Marines almost, like 40K Space Marines, but in a, you
right.
know, non-proprietary setting.
It's fucking
And
you just
if
lasers with feelings, but mecha.
sure, sure, yeah, yeah, you could do that. But with the RPG I'm thinking of, which I can't remember the name, if you got into combat, you just win,
Yeah,
which is essentially what happens with the Gundam, right? You just don't even need to worry about that. It's more about the consequences, the stress, and the strain on relationships as well. That's really crucial. And also, you can get into like space geopolitics, which would be really cool, and kind of seeing how the characters kind of influence the uh, thing you've set up for them.
yeah, because I think that's a good point. Like, there's a lot of characters in Gundam series who aren't mecha pilots, aren't Gundam pilots, and
Yep.
aren't mobile suit pilots, who are still very important. They'll be leading whichever political faction. They might be the captain of a starship, like spaceship, that is the base of operations for the Gundams or battle suits. Um, these political movers and shakers, they don't have a giant fucking robot to get in, but they certainly, in some respects, have more meaning than the protagonists in the battle suits. And if anything, that is the take home message of Iron Blooded Orphans. You know, um, like I say, all the main characters, anyone that is any badass really associated with a battlesuit is fucking dead at the end. And the
Yeah.
real people that make the difference are those that are willing to sit down and engage in politics, make compromises, make deals, and try and work towards peace without, blowing each other apart. Um, which is why Iron Blood Orphans is the best show, because it really gets that point about what Gundam, the big picture of Gundam, that people
Yeah.
maybe miss.
Yeah.
Right, I think that's us done on that bombshell.
Yep.
Right, that was cool. I'm sure we could always, if people want us to talk more about a particular series once you've watched one, whichever one, we can talk about it deeper. Um,
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about things once this Gundam miniatures game actually
Shit, yeah,
comes out.
yeah,
If it's good, right? If it's not good, we're probably just never going to talk about it.
yeah.
But I'm super curious about it, and the models we've seen so far do look very good.
I
Definitely
want
want
a
to check it
little
out.
plastic Barbatos. I want a little plastic Barbatos because he is the fucking king. Um,
Mm,
right. So, if you enjoyed this episode, you can find us darkdaysradio@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us at Dark Days Radio on Instagram, Tumblr, YouTube, Discord. Uh, we have a channel for Discord. Find us on Threads. Those are the social media places that matter. Don't go to the bad site. Um, well, maybe don't even go to fucking Facebook anymore. Really. Um,
yeah, I wouldn't.
yeah.
I haven't.
Um, yeah. Obviously, there's a link tree and everything in the show notes. Please, if you like this, come over and talk to us more about that. If you want to find out more about what we're doing, you can find us as like I was on the painting phase recently, talking about my RPG writing. I believe there are some conventions coming up and things that you lot in the US are going to, to be at.
Yeah, Chig, Crystal, and I think David as well are going to be at Gen Con this summer. So
Yeah.
that'll be really cool for them. I will not be going, but I will
Uh,
probably be at PAX Unplugged coming up in 8 months.
Yeah, I'm at ChillCon on the 22nd. I've got Lead and Steel also in Sheffield on the week after that. Then I think it is the long wait until UK Games Expo, where I will be definitely there on one of the days. And then after that, I don't know. I really want to try and do. I'd like to go up to Tabletop Scotland. I don't know if I'll do Dragon Meet yet this year. because London is expensive. Um, yeah, but that's pretty much it. That was a good episode. Lots of stuff there. That was cool.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for setting this up. Pretty cool, and can't wait for the next one.
Yeah. Right. Oh yeah, next one. Next episode, I think I'm gonna cover I think I want to cover Kador for Dark Iron. And I'm open to ideas of what to cover for Dark Hammer for some Warhammer content. There's definitely factions or things to chat about there. Like, we could definitely do a big deep dive. I don't think we have done a big deep dive on the Inquisition yet. And obviously there's some
You did Law in the Imperium, which
Oh yeah, well
probably
then we
touched
really
on it a
fucking
little bit.
haven't done the Inquisition yet for 40k, and there's two fucking good books out for it now, so we could definitely do that. Cool, yeah, that's definitely it. Right, well that's us for now. So thanks again, Mike, for helping with this, and thank you for listening, and goodbye for now.
Take it easy. This has been an episode of Darker Days Radio. Special thanks to Occam's Laser for the intro, outro, and new bumper music from their hit album, 9 Circles. Check out the rest of their work at occamslaser.bandcamp.com.